It's great to see everybody here today. I recognize a lot of faces, but I also see a few new faces. You never know. I thought maybe because it's my fourth or fifth time around that nobody would bother to show up, but anyways, you're still here. This is great. Before I begin, I do want to acknowledge that the University of Winnipeg is located on Treaty 1 land in the heart of the Métis Nation. Making this acknowledgement is a positive step towards reconciliation, but it's just a small step in a long journey to get where we need to be. Similarly, in the context of today's address, we are headed in the right direction. We have made many positive steps, but we still have a long ways to go. I'd like to thank all of you for being here today. Typically, we hold this address later in October, but we decided to move it up to September to coincide with the start of the academic year. There's a great energy on campus at this time of the year, with hallways once again filled with students. I've talked to a few professors who are back from sabbatical, and they are excited to be back in front of a classroom again. We've got alumni returning home for homecoming, the great rock climb on Friday, UWSA roll call on the front lawn, and Westman teams starting a brand new season. On our first day of classes last Tuesday, the staff and students central served, anybody want to guess how many students day one? 900 students. And rather than having them line up on Portage Avenue, although that did sometimes make for a good story or not, depending on your perspective, students now take a number and they have a seat in the annex and they watch for their number on the screen, the annex by Starbucks. So Dr. James Curry and I decided to grab a coffee and go over and see the activity. And now I see James. So as we waited in the Starbucks line, some of you may know, some of you may not know, that in addition to being VPA and provost, he's an active mathematician. He still publishes papers, he still teaches classrooms. But did you also know he's a magician? So James's inner voice, and you know what I'm talking about by his inner voice that sometimes comes out, debated whether or not he should do magic in front of the students. Was that a proper thing for a provost to do? He chose not to, but it did make me think about the magic involved in getting ready for the start of a new year. Registration, Colin is here somewhere, what would we do without you? Orientation, far too many people to even start to thank. Scheduling classrooms, somebody needs to write a program for that. We still do it with a human touch. Perhaps even scrambling the week before to hire instructors, and there's a few of you, you know who I'm talking about. I'm sorry that we put you in that position. Renovations, and the list goes on and on. All this to say, you are talented magicians in your own right, and we are really grateful for all you do. The longer I'm here, the more I learn about what you do, and the more I am amazed with just how much you do with the resources we provide your way. So today I'll be walking through our strategic directions and updating you on our progress. And I wanted to take a different approach this year and dive a bit deeper into how we are defining success. On your way in, you might have seen this document. It's my report to the Board of Regents. We did this as a team. We presented it in June, and it's also available online. We worked hard to develop some visuals to give you at-a-glance updates on where we're at. And much of the data that I will talk about today is in this report, so I encourage you to take a look at it later, not right now. But as much as I emphasize the value of data, I know at this university what we value most is relationships. And I know that the things that make you want to be part of this community are simply not measurable. So I don't want anybody to think I've lost sight of what we are all about. We're about people. But in this day and age, it's good to also have some data. This past year has been an incredible year to serve as president. We've introduced new academic programs such as a Master in Management and a Master of Arts in Criminal Justice. We have formed exciting new partnerships with groups like the Manitoba Métis Federation, the Canadian Museum of Human Rights, and the Enterprise Machine Intelligence and Learning Initiative. We celebrated one of our largest and most diverse groups of honorary degree recipients, Drs. Jane Goodall, Jack Zipes, Linda Tuhawaii Smith, Maria Campbell, Peter Auger, and Albert McLeod. Hearing each of these recipients had a lasting impact on me personally, but perhaps most memorable was the opportunity to travel with a cohort of students to Maria Campbell's home, the former home of Métis leader Gabrielle Dumont, near Batoche, Saskatchewan, to present her degree in person. It was a powerful experience to be able to meet here near the site of the Northwest Rebellion, an event that forever shaped the lives of Métis in Canada. We have also refreshed some of our spaces, opened new ones, and renamed one very special one, the former Spence Street Promenade, which now goes by the name Marcia Hannon Way, in honor of our pioneering former president who helped break glass ceilings and transform the university. This year has also been a challenging one in many respects, which I will be touching on. But before that, I would like to go back and take a look at some of the challenges that all post-secondary institutions are facing today. As the future of work changes, so do the expectations of universities. These expectations were very different 10, 20 years ago. Employers expect their graduates leave here job-ready with an adaptable skill set. Students expect an education that prepares them for a shifting job market, one that is being disrupted by new ideas and technologies. Our students are becoming more aware and attentive to issues that impact their health and well-being, and we want to be there to meet their needs. This means creating new policies, such as our newly approved sexual violence prevention policy and our upcoming review of the student accommodation policy. It's important to remember that addressing these challenges takes resources, and the reality is we are being called on to do more with less. What I hope to share with you today is that we are being deliberate in how we approach each of our strategic directions and that we are focusing on quality. When we developed our strategic directions 3 years ago, we chose to focus on our strengths. The University of Winnipeg has a long reputation for academic excellence, and we wanted to make sure our decisions enhance this part of our culture. We know a large part of our culture is defined by the close connections between faculty and students. This unique learning environment empowers our undergraduate students to contribute to research and scholarly work and provides them the leadership skills necessary for success after they graduate. To this end, we set a goal of maintaining our student body at around 10,000 students, and I'm happy to say that overall enrollment is steady. Our university has always been known for its small class sizes, and we continue to see the benefits this learning opportunity affords our students today. Students like Caitlin McEachran. Caitlin graduated with a 4-year Bachelor of Arts in Economics in 2017 and just completed her Master of Arts in Environmental Resource and Development Economics. Her professors helped her find and grow her unique skills, which she is now using in a career for a government agency. Caitlin is one of the students recently featured in our Education with Impact campaign, which you may have seen highlighted around the city as well as online. The goal of the campaign is to draw a line from specific programs at our university to the impact that our graduates are making in their respective fields. For example, we showed how studying chemistry at UWinnipeg can lead to a career in medicine or agriculture, or how studying geography can lead to designing more efficient communities as a city planner. We will be building on the success of this campaign by highlighting a second group of programs. Stay tuned. While our overall student size remains the same, our students are changing. Our student body is now made up of 10% Indigenous students, which is up from 8% in 2013. Our number of international students saw a similar jump, and in 2017 was at 7.5%. What we are seeing is far more meaningful than a simple increase in numbers. These increases represent more classroom discussions that are better informed by a range of perspectives, more alumni using the skills they learned here to help people from their home country or community, and more students seeking a learning experience that is reflective of who they are. Such was the case with the Indigenous course requirement. Simply put, our university is enriched in every way by diversity and inclusion. While we are encouraged by the diversification among our students, on the faculty and staff side, we have more work to do in order to set and meet our equity, diversity, and inclusion targets. In particular, Indigenous staff and faculty, people with a disability, and self-identified members of racialized communities are all areas that need our attention. Over the summer, we were pleased to meet with the Honorable Christy Duncan, Minister of Science and Sport, who was here on campus to host an event on the Athena Swan program. Athena Swan was established in 2005 in the United Kingdom to promote the advancement of women researchers in STEM fields. Minister Duncan was here to discuss how this program could be adapted for use in Canada. One of the key things that we came away with from that meeting is that our approach will be evidence-based. Wherever possible, we want to make sure we are collecting data so we can establish targets and measure our progress. We also need to make sure we put data in the proper context. For example, when comparing our student and faculty diversity, it's important to note that faculty turnover does not happen as quickly as student turnover. And over the next year, we will be looking at our hiring practices to help address the gaps we have identified. In everything we do, our ultimate goal is to provide students a quality education that sets them up for success. The definition of success is different for every student. Many arrive here right after high school looking to learn how to utilize their talents, while others join us later in life looking to upgrade their skills, take a new career path, or re-enter the workforce. In general, we want students to attend here and finish their course of study, whether that's a pre-professional program, a baccalaureate, post-baccalaureate, or a graduate degree. But we also know that along the way, they need to learn life skills like critical thinking, effective communication, and problem solving. We know this because we hear from employers that these are the skills that are increasingly in demand. We believe we are succeeding in our goal of providing a well-rounded education to students. When we asked graduates about their experience at UWinnipeg, the majority of them responded that their education had at least some impact on their ability to think critically, write clearly, conduct research, relate to different people, and learn their chosen field. And we are seeing these skills in action. We see them in people like Matt Scobrook, who graduated with a BA in Politics and French Studies in 2011. Matt's career has taken some interesting turns. He succeeded as a communicator and business analyst in government, nonprofit, and private organizations. He eventually co-founded his own company, IO Airflow, which specializes in creating software to make buildings more efficient. And there are many more examples like Matt. A recent survey found that 92% of our students are satisfied with their decision to attend the university. Grads are finding employment and are earning a good salary within a few years of graduation. And surprisingly, 2/3 of our graduates leave here without debt. Evidence of our student success can be found in many areas, but perhaps one of the most revealing ways is to look at a map. I'd like to thank the Geography Department for preparing this map. It shows where our alumni now live, and I've been fortunate to meet many alumni directly or have learned their stories by talking to the faculty who have taught them. If you zoom in, you will find countless stories of alumni in different sectors and stages of their career, each of them finding success in their own way. In Montreal, calculus grad Darren Bacchus helps grow Canadians' pension plans in his role as Senior Vice President and Chief Legal Officer at the federal government's Public Sector Pension Investments Agency. Across the border in New York City, you will find David Kill, who not too long ago was learning social and cognitive psychology as a research assistant in our Faculty of Arts. Today, he uses those same skills to help discover the next big social media phenomena in his role as product researcher at Instagram. Head overseas to the UK and you will meet Joelle Erickson, an economics grad who has spent time with agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. She now works in London as an analyst for one of the world's largest financial groups. There are still areas we need to work on to ensure our students are provided every possible opportunity to succeed. We need to make sure we are meeting the needs of the 1/3 of students who leave here with debt because they've chosen to invest in their education. We also recognize that our retention rates are below the Canadian university average. To help address these issues, we'll be revamping the Opportunity Fund so that it's providing the right amount of financial supports to those who need it. Our students lead busy lives, often working multiple jobs or supporting families, and many face significant challenges and barriers to get here. They also have different learning styles that don't necessarily fit with the traditional classroom model. Our accessibility is deeply embedded in our identity, and it's something that we all take pride in. We want to keep opening new pathways to a U-Winnipeg education, as well as strengthen existing ones. We will be taking a closer look at all of our available supports, including bursaries, student aid, and health and well-being supports, to make sure we offer the right mix for our students. We also want to provide students more opportunities for experiential learning, integrated work placements, and international exchanges. Our approach to Indigenization continues to be informed by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to actions, many of which relate to education. But it's also informed by our relationship with Indigenous peoples, both here at the university and within our communities. As I mentioned before, our Indigenous student numbers are up, which is a positive sign that we're moving in the right direction. I recently ran into Perry Bellegarde, National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations in the airport, and I shared with him these numbers. But he said to me, "That's great, Annette, but are Indigenous students graduating at the same rate as non-Indigenous students?" And his comments illustrated to me how important it is not only to bring Indigenous students in, to make sure we are providing the right types of supports to them during their time here. We also want to make sure that Indigenous students have equal learning opportunities across all of our faculties. Indigenous students are underrepresented in science and business. We know the reasons for this are complex. We also know that role models are key, and we need to increase the number of Indigenous faculty across all areas. In January, we announced an agreement with the Manitoba Métis Federation that will see them contribute $60,000 a year for 10 years. And this is towards research into Métis policy. It will include the creation of an annual Métis and Scholar in Residence position to support a full range of research possibilities. We are also building a stronger relationship with the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation, building on Kevin Lamoureux's one-year secondment with them. These partnerships are an example of the collaborations we are working on with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit groups to enhance our approach to reconciliation and support our Indigenous students and faculty. Our community has made a number of important steps towards Indigenization over the last few years. Of course, introducing the Indigenous course requirement is a major part of this. We've learned a lot of lessons through the launch of the ICR, but it's important to remember that we learned many of those lessons because we were one of the first universities to jump in. And we are proud to be at this stage. The ICR is here, and it couldn't have reached this point without all of your resolve. And I do want to thank the UW community for embracing it. As with acknowledging territory, the ICR is a step towards reconciliation, but it is certainly not the end. We have a number of new academic programs underway, including our Summer Scholars Program that sees Indigenous undergraduate students participate in a 10-week research assistantship program with faculty researchers from a variety of areas. And last April, we officially opened Merchants Corner, marking the completion of a multi-year project to transform the 100-year-old Merchants Hotel on Selkirk Avenue into a mixed-use center for community-based education and cultural programs. And in June, we launched an exciting new partnership with the Canadian Museum for Human Rights to deliver executive leadership training in Indigenous and human rights delivered on-site at the museum. We have also introduced several changes to Indigenized convocation this year, including offering special stoles to our Indigenous graduates. This stole is custom designed by Destiny Seymour, a young Anishinaabe interior designer. Going forward, we will continue to look at how to indigenize more events and spaces on campus to reflect our commitment to welcoming Indigenous peoples, cultures, and ways of knowing. The new Spring Feast, which will be an annual celebration of student and faculty excellence, and the recently unveiled Star Blanket mural on the Helen Betty Osborne building are both examples of these efforts in action. Seeing the neighborhood come together in celebration at the mural unveiling really underscored the importance of education's access programs and the community learning programs taking place at the Witchywaganuk Center. Wrapping the building in a Star Blanket mural is a beautiful way to honor and protect those teachings, as well as the teachers and students inside. We are pleased with the progress we have made, but we know we have a lot more to do. And we know that the next steps will be challenging and could take some time to fully realize. We will continue to listen, we will continue to consult with the Indigenous Advisory Circle, and we will be mindful of the relationships we have built to get us to this point. The next strategic direction is one that we have a lot to be proud of, and that's our commitment to research excellence, knowledge, mobilization, and impact. Our reputation as a research institution is growing, and it's fair to say that we punch above our weight. This is thanks to your incredible work, which continues to have measurable impact here in our local communities and across the world. And your efforts aren't going unrecognized. Last year marked the university's higher ever external funding at over $8 million, which is 31% higher than 2013-14. Our faculty and student researchers are at the forefront of developing solutions to some of society's most pressing problems. For example, as Canada figures out how to meet the needs of thousands of newcomers, here at the university we have several researchers devoting to easing the transition for refugees. Researchers like Dr. Ray Silvius and Dr. Carlos Colorado, who last year released a study that found many of the housing resources in place for Syrian refugees were temporary and have since been removed. Their report makes recommendations to both the federal and provincial governments on how to ensure a successful transition. Or Dr. Jan Stewart and Dr. Lorna Martin, who authored a guide to teachers that helps them provide culturally responsive guidance to new students who have lived through trauma, the trauma of war, family separation, and loss. Just as the University of Winnipeg is known for its social conscience, our research into social issues has become an area of recognized strength. We have also built significant capacity in historical research, using data from the past in order to make sense of today's world. For example, Les Sebastian, who recently joined the anthropology department as a research scholar, is dedicated to building new understandings of the experiences of Indigenous youth in the legal, health, and social service systems. In particular, he is looking at how those systems impact the lives of people diagnosed with fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. Another example is Dr. William Roy Dixon from our Religion and Culture Department, who co-authored an introductory text on Sufism, which is Islam's popular tradition of spiritual transformation, art, and philosophy. Unlike other historical texts, Dr. Dixon's book takes a unique approach, starting in contemporary North America and moving backwards to the ancient origin of Sufism. A third established area is natural science that leads to applications with global impact. This is the type of research that impacts all kinds of people in all kinds of ways. It could be an everyday thing like finding ways to make your smartphone more portable and power efficient, which could result from the work of Dr. Chris Weeb, our Canada Research Chair in Quantum Materials Discovery. It could also have dramatic consequences on your health. For example, Dr. Melanie Martin and her team have found early signs of Alzheimer's disease in the brain using MRI. Or Dr. René DeVille, who is studying the link between viral genomes in our DNA and diseases like ALS and schizophrenia. These aren't the only areas of research we are excelling in. Our strength and capacity is growing in a number of areas, including Indigenous research, environmental research, computational chemistry, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. We will be looking at ways to support these areas going forward, including fundraising for academic chairs. On top of our record research funding, we are also gaining significant credibility and trust. More and more people are seeking our expertise to help guide policy and inform Canadians. When the federal government needs input on housing issues, they turn to our experts in the Institute of Urban Studies. This July, the Institute was awarded a standing offer to undertake housing and socioeconomic research for the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. Essentially, they are one of a limited number of research groups pre-approved to take on this research, a recognition of the high caliber of work to emerge from the Institute over nearly 5 decades. When the media needs expert opinions on trending topics, they turn to the team at the Media Centre for Public Policy and Knowledge Mobilization. Launched in July, the Centre seeks to understand how policy-making decisions are influenced by media and how research institutions commit to knowledge mobilization. It will also house the Evidence Network, which works with researchers to provide media with op-eds, backgrounders, and podcasts on important policy issues. Our researchers have had op-eds published across Canada through the network on highly relevant topics, including gender equality, bilingual Indigenous education, and the impact of legalized marijuana. The university is also a founding partner of The Conversation Canada, an independent news and community site that pairs academics with journalists to produce reliable and accessible information. When you add these all up, it results in hundreds of thousands of people engaging with the work of our researchers. This is an incredible accomplishment, but it's important to remember that before this work reaches out into the world, it starts here on our campus. Our researchers are collaborating with one another and peers from around the world. Our research team at the National Nuclear Laboratory, Triumph, for example, has physicists and students hard at work here on campus, at the lab in Vancouver, and at multiple other institutions in Japan and Canada. Consider looking down the hall the next time you find yourself seeking inspiration. You may be surprised at who is interested in collaborating with you on a research project. They may specialize in an entirely different field. A great example of this is Dr. Pauline Greenhill and Dr. Stephen Coe. You have to look at that picture. Who combine their strengths and expertise in women's and gender studies and criminal justice for their research into Canadian crime films and how they shape our understanding of justice in our country. Or Dr. Melanie O'Gorman in economics, who teamed up with Dr. Shelley Tulick in anthropology to study the factors contributing to and detracting from the success of Inuit students in the North. And at a higher level, the Richardson College for the Environment with the Campus Sustainability Office will be hosting a Mix and Mingle event in the Richardson Atrium next Monday, September 17th, for faculty, staff, and students. The goal here, of course, is to spark some new collaborations. Events like these illustrate the importance of a supportive environment where collective success benefits everyone. Our ability to mobilize knowledge, both within campus and across the research community, is a defining trait for the university, and we plan to do everything we can to support these kinds of endeavors. And finally, I'd like to take a moment to address the overall health of the university. As I mentioned at the beginning of the address, we are being called on to do more with less. 2 years ago, we implemented a 3-year budget strategy that would help us advance our strategic directions while eliminating the operating deficit. Up until this point, the university had run deficits in 9 of the 10 previous years. Since implementing this strategy, our financial situation has improved substantially, and this hasn't come without a lot of tough decisions. We have curbed many of our internal and administrative costs, including a 20% reduction of senior administration. Our administration costs are among the lowest in the country, and at 4.3% of our budget make us one of the most efficient Canadian universities. It's not exactly what I want us to be known for, but it is something. We'll take that. Throughout this process, we have prioritized maintaining our position as an accessible university that invests in its student success. We are increasing amounts for scholarships, bursaries, and awards to help students hardest hit by tuition increases. Our budget this year, for example, includes an additional $200,000 in financial help for students, an increase of 16.5% from last year and 32% from 2016-17. This will help ensure that we remain a viable option for underrepresented and non-traditional students. and our revenue-generating units are helping us to meet our goals. For example, our PACE and English language programs are providing in-demand services and creating pathways to and from our academic core. The Community Renewal Corporation is now pursuing projects outside of the university, providing a niche service in between private development and for-profits, not-for-profits. And on the fundraising side, the University of Winnipeg Foundation continues to have success, and this year raised over $3.5 million towards scholarships, capital projects, programs, and research. Our next fundraising steps will include the launch of 3 mini-campaigns, several of which I have alluded to throughout this address. These will include campaigns focused on the Opportunity Fund, our academic chairs, and a capital campaign for Sparling, Centennial, and of course the library. We also continue to make great strides towards our sustainability goals, including our primary target of achieving carbon neutrality by 2035. Most recently, we partnered with Manitoba Hydro to bring biomass onto campus, biomass heating to campus. You may have seen this large metal silo outside as you enter Manitoba Hall. This structure houses the locally sourced wood pellets that fuel the system. In addition to keeping us warm, the project fulfills more than half of our goal of having 5% of our energy come from unconventional renewable sources. So in closing, what each of our strategic directions share in common is a set of guiding principles that we used to originally create them in 2015. 3 years later, we are staying true to those principles, and the result is measurable progress. First, we are focused on quality. We want to make sure that we are achieving excellence across all of our 5 strategic directions. Second, we are being deliberate and intentional in our growth. We want to make sure that where we do expand, it's not coming at the expense of the core of what we do. We are using an evidence-based approach to track success and identify areas in need of more work. And finally, most importantly, we are keeping you, our faculty, staff, and students at the heart of our decision-making. We know that each step we take has a rippling effect on your careers, your studies, your research. I recognize that, and I want you to know that we are always considering how to foster an environment that supports your success. I'd like to thank you once again for joining me here today. I look forward to meeting with you over the weeks and months to come and learning more about your work and your impact. And most of all, I just want to thank you for everything you do here at the University of Winnipeg. Thank you for listening.
We have a little bit of time, I think, for question and answer. So there's a microphone just right in the middle if anybody has any questions.
Hi, Annette. Thank you very much for that. In the spirit of reconciliation, I was wondering if you could provide some more detail as to efforts the university is making to assist Indigenous students to complete their degrees. And I'm thinking about sort of tangible things, regards to daycare, financial resources, tutoring and mentoring, those types of things. Thank you.
So I'm looking here at Andrea. Andrea has contact with the Indigenous students who choose to find the Aboriginal Student Services Centre. And one of the things we've talked about is how many find it and how many don't. But Andrea and her staff, I think, have a lot of day-to-day contact, and they ensure that the students are aware of what financial supports are available. The Opportunity Fund is a whole other complicated set of decisions that involve a lot of other people. And there's also folks in academic advising. But I think part of what you're really getting at, Malcolm, is the degree to which we are able to provide a more personalized service. And so I can point to a number of things that we are doing, but I don't know that the sum is greater than the parts just yet, and that's something we have to dig a little deeper into in this next year. So part of it is, you look at the data at a high level. We have a retention challenge. We need to understand more how our students are moving around the post-secondary ecosystem within Manitoba, and we need to understand better, how to help the particular students that need help. So I don't have a silver bullet other than to say that we'll keep trying and we'll keep measuring. And it is about, fundamentally, it's about applying resources properly and closer coordinating all the parts. So with that, I do have something concrete to say. If you were to look at our approach to indigenization on campus, it is becoming a more distributed approach. It used to be largely led out of the President's office through the AVP of Indigenous Affairs, those two offices, and it's being spread out. We now have an Indigenous academic lead. Jamie Cedro was our first last year. Lorena Fontaine has taken it on this year, and we're building a tighter relationship between the team with the provost, myself, Kevin, Lorena, as well as Andrea and Angeline Nelson.
Tensei and Agrisei for the presentation. My question was for, specifically, there's a lot of talks in that presentation about reconciliation, and the 94 calls to action by the TRC has one outline for post-secondary institutions, and that's a commitment to a language diploma or degree.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, aside from the 4 classes that are offered here this year, I was wondering if there was going to be more tangible and committed goal for the university to create that program. Thanks.
Thank you, Morgan. Morgan Brightnose is our UWSA president. So Lorena Fontaine has agreed to take on the Indigenous academic lead this year, and one of the conversations that James and I want to have with her, she's got some ideas on how to improve our offerings there. And I don't know that I really want to share everything too quickly because we haven't really worked it through, but I think part of it is growing capacity, and one of the things Lorena has talked about, for example, is working with education to certify teachers. So I don't know if it's fair to ask Lorena. It isn't. But you know who to talk to later. Sorry. I think she did on that new job for one day, so my apologies, Lorena. Not always a good strategy to throw the ball, but Morgan, absolutely, that's a key part. And I want to thank Dr. Shelley Tulloch for her evidence network piece on Indigenous language education as a right. Don't speak to me in French. I only took 50.
So how about Indigenous law? Has any thought been gone into that?
Yeah, we talked after we had a presentation on Indigenous law, and I know I got into trouble at my installation because I'm looking at Jeremy, but one of the questions Nick Martin asked me was, about duplication and collaboration with other universities, and I said, oh, well, we know our place in Manitoba. For example, we would never want a second law faculty because we know Manitoba only has 1 million people. And anyways, Jeremy gave me the gears because never say never. But one of the things you and I talked about is even though we don't have a law degree, a law program, what stops us from offering courses in Indigenous law? Because after you and I heard that presentation, we both wished this is something we had an opportunity to learn in our younger years. Yeah. Well, with that, I've learned to get away when you should, and I want to thank everybody. Okay. Thanks for coming.